Hello, this is Lady Boulay, and I hope you're having a wonderful day. Thank you for your support. Thank you for subscribing to the channel. Thank you for your comments, and thank you for your thumbs up. Thank you for all you do to support the channel. And yes, we are committed to love one another, whether we want to or not, or whether we agree with each other or not.
The adoption of this resolution will not erase history, but it will acknowledge it. The trafficking in enslaved Africans and racialized chattel enslavement were foundational crimes that have shaped the modern world, and their consequences continue to manifest in structural inequality, racial discrimination, and economic disparity. The first step towards healing is truth. The truth about the story of the transatlantic slave trade must be told. And this resolution at the United Nations is the first step. And we expect that with the consultations we've done and the endorsement of the AU, that finally the truth about the transatlantic slave trade being the gravest injustice and crime against humanity would be acknowledged.
That was the Ghanaian president, President John Dramani Mahama. Ghana has taken a leading role at the United Nations to demand global recognition of the transatlantic slave trade as the gravest crime against humanity and to push for reparatory justice for Africans and the African diaspora. It's not supposed to be symbolic. I think it is, but it's not supposed to be symbolic. But it is a strategy that's coordinated by the African Union, CARICOM, which is the Caribbean reparations claim, and several nations across the global south, which is other countries that have been affected by the transatlantic slave trade. Now, who's not on board with Ghana and the African Union and them speaking for us is Black Americans. Black Americans do not want Ghana or any African nation to take a leading role in our reparations claim. Because, first of all, Ghana and other West African and Central African countries were complicit in the transatlantic slave trade. And they have had 400 years to say something to the United Nations or to the Western countries that benefited from African slavery, and they haven't said anything. But now that we have our justice claim going, Ghana has jumped in to be the spokesperson because they're trying to get something for themselves. Ghana should be concerned about what's going on in Ghana. They should be working on their infrastructure, on their health situation, just like Nigeria. Nigeria, one being an African nation who doesn't even have a decent hospital for folks who've been in car accidents, as we saw with the Nigerian boxer a few months ago. Ghana doesn't have decent health care or decent transportation nationwide. So they need to be concerned about their own country. Now, if they want to work on their own reparations claim, that's their business. But they don't need to be working on ours. That's what's being said by the people in the United States. And I agree with that. They ought to work on their own problems. I remember years ago when Black Americans were going to Africa trying to get African leaders interested in Pan-Africanism and trying to get African leaders interested in some unity, some global unity between Black people, and to try to explain to them what we were really going through in this country, how difficult it was for us to be citizens of this country. And the Africans basically thumbed their nose at them and told them they had their own problems. They don't have they had their own problems. They didn't have time to be bothered with problems of Black Americans. And I'm paraphrasing it. They weren't interested in what was going on in America because they had their own problems. Well, I think they should keep that same energy. They shouldn't be interested in our justice claim if the Caribbeans and the Afro Latinos and the other people want them to be interested in their business, involved in their business. They should be involved in their business. But if we don't want them in ours, then we shouldn't have them in ours. They don't have any business going to our slave burial grounds to pray or to whatever it was they were doing there in New York that the Black Americans basically told them they weren't wanted. So I don't know if it was right or not, but that was how they chose to deal with it. I could be wrong, but I don't trust those African people. And what the other Black Americans are saying is that no African nation can negotiate on behalf of our justice claim. Reparations are owed by the United States government to United States citizens whose ancestors were enslaved here. And we don't need any Africans to help us understand that. The Africans captured us. They invaded those villages, captured those people, shackled them, and walked them down to those white people and sold them to those white people. And those white people kept them in those slave dungeons until those ships came in and took them away. And once those slave ships hit the international waters of the Atlantic Ocean, our ties with Africa were severed. So now here they come at the late date by some Black American grifters who has invited them in. Then they'll get a bag from it, and we'll get nothing. But they've been invited in by some of them. You can bet your bottom dollar Reverend Sharpton and Ben Crump and Reverend Jackson, if he was alive, all of them would be involved in that, and then they would end up with the money, and we would end up with nothing. So we don't need any Africans to help us talk to the American government. That's our job. We have been dealing with these white people for 400 years, for better or for worse. From the worst times ever, we dealt with them. We built bridges when we could. And now we don't need any help from those Africans to try and help get in the way, really, because all they're doing is just getting in the way. They're just in the way at this point. They have a whole continent of problems, but yet they're going to get involved in this. No, I say no. I just don't approve of it. I don't agree with it. And I would agree with the ones who don't agree with it, that we don't need any Africans to talk to the American government. We are American citizens. We should be able to talk to them ourselves. And really, from my point of view, but it's not my business, but the Ghanaians shouldn't be speaking for the people from the Caribbean because that's about their lineage. They shouldn't be speaking for the Afro Latinos because that's their lineage. And they certainly shouldn't be talking about Black Americans because that's our lineage. Our lineage is different from their lineage. Nobody's saying that Ghana shouldn't pursue their own reparations. If they feel that they were done wrong by the white people because the white people gained something from it and they didn't, then that's between them and the white people. They don't have anything to do with us. So they should talk to the white people about that, how the white people managed to make something out of slavery and they didn't. But other than that, they don't have anything to do with our justice claim. This is about our lineage. It's about our family. We'll speak for our family. We're standing in the gap for our slave ancestors. They can stay out of it and work on the people that's over there now because they still have slavery over there in Ghana. I was just watching a documentary the other day about Ghana and about them enslaving children, allowing children to be enslaved and working for little or nothing and doing it for years. And the man said they've always had it. There was a Ghanaian man sitting there being interviewed and said they've always had slavery there. So they still have slavery going on over there in Ghana. They have a lot of nerve over here trying to speak for Black Americans and trying to speak for the transatlantic slave trade and trying to go to Black American slave burial grounds and praying. That's a joke. It's nothing but a joke. And I just really can't say enough about this, but I wish that they would mind their business because they're really meddling into something that's none of their business. I don't think our ancestors would appreciate them over here speaking over them or after what they did, the part that their ancestors played in the transatlantic slave trade. It's just a grift. They're just trying to grift. They're trying to get you, trying to build Africa at our expense. The year of return and running over there, showing those slave castles and charging to see the last bath that the slaves took before they left Ghana. All that's just a grift. It's just a joke. And I wouldn't be caught dead. Well, I wouldn't be caught over there talking about going to the last bath that the slaves took before they left Ghana. I wouldn't. I, anyway, y'all let me know what you think about the video. Thank you for listening and have a good evening.